Nikkei Asia News Roundup
with Jada and Brian.
Happy New Year and welcome to the Nikkei Asia News Roundup, where we bring you the latest updates and insights on the dynamic world of Asia and more. I'm your host, Brian.
And I'm Jada. Please join us for our first episode of 2025. Now let's delve into the headlines. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.
Vietnamese electric vehicle maker VinFast is set to more than double its global production this year, even as it faces an uncertain market environment marked by slowing demand and intense price competition.
Samsung Electronics' operating profit fell by 29.2% to 6.5 trillion won, or $4.5 billion in the fourth quarter from the previous 3 months, falling well short of expectations as the downturn in the memory chip industry deepens.
A $47 billion Chinese state-backed investment fund for the domestic chip industry has kicked into gear as Beijing looks to beef up its domestic supply chain ahead of potential U.S. export restrictions by incoming President Donald Trump.
Indonesia this week welcomed its formal entry into BRICS, saying it would use its membership to strengthen partnerships with and amplify voices of the Global South.
Tokyo will begin requiring solar panels on roofs of new homes in a bid to satisfy both increasing energy and decarbonization demands, though concerns linger about the measure pushing up already high home prices.
The soybean market remains bearish due to concerns that the U.S.-China trade spat could kick up a gear when Donald Trump returns to the White House, as China's higher tariffs could lower demand for a U.S. export already in ample supply. Now moving on to the next segment.
Indian travelers rediscover Southeast Asia for leisure and remote work. Upwardly mobile Indians are increasingly flocking to Southeast Asia to slake their thirsts for foreign vacations, with trips to the region now outpacing travel to long popular destinations in the Middle East, South Asia, and Europe. Indians' fondness for Southeast Asia is part of a broader wanderlust, powered by an economy that is growing faster than much of the rest of the world, and helping to put exotic foreign locales within the reach of more people. Indians spent $33 billion on overseas tourism in 2023, more than twice as much as a decade ago, according to the United Nations World Tourism Organization. This put them 10th in terms of outbound tourism spending, albeit still well behind China, which topped the list at $196.5 billion. Relaxed visa rules have added to Southeast Asia's allure. Thailand introduced visa-free entry for Indian passport holders in November 2023, and Malaysia did the same 1 month later. Vietnam and Indonesia, meanwhile, offer e-visas. But it is a different story for Indians traveling to Europe. Nearly 152,000 applications from Indians for a Schengen visa, an entry permit for non-EU nationals making short visits to a bloc of 29 European nations, were rejected in 2023. Up 25% from the previous year, according to the European Commission, the EU's executive arm. Reasons given ranged from inadequate documentation to a lack of travel insurance.
Vietnam ensures it can track who says what on Facebook and TikTok. Vietnam is requiring Facebook, TikTok, and other platforms to verify users' phone numbers under a law that activists say will expose dissidents in the one-party state. Decree 147 also bans teens from social media unless their parents sign up for them and requires networks to give blue-tick authentication to government agencies. Hanoi says tech companies that violate the decree face having their platforms blocked from the internet in Vietnam. Other provisions they must follow include removing content authorities deem offensive within 24 hours and limiting news from unofficial accounts. Internet companies should, quote, provide information of violating users to state management agencies upon request, the Information Ministry said. While Vietnamese factories increasingly supply Apple, BYD, soju maker Jinro, and companies leaving China, the fast-growing economy's trade partners are expressing alarm at the shrinking space for civil society, including high-profile arrests of environmentalists and bloggers.
And now for news highlights. In each episode, Jada and I have a discussion about a recent article or articles that have particularly captured our attention.
And today we are going to talk about predictions for Asia in 2025. So this is an annual reader survey conducted by Nikkei Asia, where we ask readers what they think the new year has in store for markets, trade, diplomacy, and business.
Now, in our introduction to this article, we mentioned that last year's survey, our readers were pretty much right about what they saw. And by the way, it's a little under 100,850 or so respondents with valid responses came back. And we weigh that on what they say to various questions like how will China's stock market fare, what will happen with the new Trump presidency, that kind of stuff. And there's a few of them that are we're pretty interesting. Like, let's talk real quickly about what's going on because the U.S. president. There's going to be a new U.S. president.
Yes, we had a couple of questions for Donald Trump since he will be returning to the White House this month, very soon. And I'm sure a lot of readers are thinking about what will happen once he's back as a president. One of the questions was about tariffs, right? Because that's been a big deal in his campaign.
Major campaign issue, and he's still talking about it post-election. And one of the questions is, will he follow through on his 60% tariff on Chinese goods?
Yes, this year. And our readers, they were kind of divided on this answer, right?
Yeah, I found that fascinating because they were like, maybe he will, maybe he won't. Because he's kind of known for changing his mind at a whim on things like this, or maybe adjusting on a whim. And so people are responding with, they're being prepared for any circumstance is basically what the answer was.
Yes. So 51.7% of respondents said no, while 48.3% said yes. So as you mentioned, a lot of, uncertainties still once he's back and starts putting all of his promises maybe into gear. That might happen. But one of the concerns, it seems, is that all of these tariffs that he is saying he will impose will actually, lead to inflationary impact to the American consumers. So that's not really what that would be a huge backlash for Trump. So
that's been something that's been brought up a lot since the election, is that if he follows through on this might have, because inflation's still happening in the United States, this might have a further impact. And some people are saying maybe not as much, and it really is a wait and see situation. So we have to wait and see.
Yes. And mentioning about inflation, so we had a couple of questions about markets as well.
Yes, it's not purely Trump, but it is related because the United States is such a huge influence on Asia. Currencies.
Yes.
And what's going to happen to currencies across Asia? Are they going to get weaker? And the responses were mostly yes, they believe currencies will weaken against the U.S. dollar.
62.6% of respondents said yes. So a majority was saying currencies will further decline due to U.S. inflation.
And a lot of this, it's not necessarily Trump, but also the Federal Reserve, which is, in theory, independent of the presidency. But we'll see how that goes. One that I found fascinating is because the yen, the Japanese yen, has been weakening significantly in the past year and a half to 2 years. And respondents, that was one of the currencies that respondents said, we don't know, it might actually get closer to equalizing with rates in the United States from the Bank of Japan.
Yes, as they look to raise rates further, possibly in 2025.
Yeah, and so the response from the readers we surveyed was kind of a shrug. Like, we actually don't know. Maybe I'm guessing a lot of people hope it doesn't weaken further, but it depends on what side of the market you're on. So that was a fascinating one because it's been it's been very significant how much the yen has weakened in the past year.
I mean, it's affected, travel and consumption in Japan. There are obviously questions about Southeast Asia as well, and one of them was about Indonesia's new capital.
Which this has been going on for a while. This was a pet project. Well, let me correct that. That sounds mildly insulting to say it's a pet project of former President Joko Widodo. But he was very big on moving the capital out of Jakarta to a new, completely brand new city built out of the jungle called Nusantara.
Yes.
And it's still under construction.
Yes, they had last year. They had their first cabinet meeting. They held a Independence Day celebration there, but there's still constructions going on. Not everything is being moved to Nusantara, right?
Living accommodations for lawmakers and other people involved, bureaucrats, are still under construction. And there's a question of when this will become the official capital.
Yeah.
And the plan was to do it this year. But what makes it the official capital versus Jakarta? And apparently it's a presidential decree. And the current president, who just entered office 3 months ago?
In October, yeah.
Yeah, Prabowo Subianto. He's not against the capital, it seems, but he's less enthusiastic.
He's showed support for, Widodo's project, obviously saying he will carry on his legacy, whatnot, but he has higher priorities, right?
Which is his big one recently is school lunches.
Free school lunches.
Free school lunches.
Yes.
It's a huge, expensive program, but that's been his thing that he's really into. And there is the debate of how much money we should be spending on building this capital, because it's very expensive, versus feeding children.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
And it seems like funding two of those projects will be very difficult, and a lot of our respondents, I believe, are thinking the same thing. So 63% of respondents said no to Nusantara really becoming Indonesia's capital this year.
So we'll just have to wait for that capital to change over.
Yeah. And that brings us to the close of today's episode.
We look forward to having you join up again for the next edition of the Nikkei Asia News Roundup.
Stay informed, stay curious. Until next time, I'm Jada.
And I'm Brian. See you again, and take care. This program is brought to you by Nikkei.